Thank you, Brianna. And thanks to the Marsh Stream for this community service broadcast platform benefiting communities in the Bay Area and everywhere. I'm Gail Schickley. Welcome to Solo Arts Heal. Tonight, we feature singer and storyteller artist Andee Joyce, who is with us standing by for both live and recorded excerpts of her show, Rhythm and Autism. This is one of a series presented to you live on Zoom and YouTube twice monthly, thanks to the Marsh Theaters, San Francisco and Berkeley. Since April 2020, the Marsh Stream has broadcast Solo Arts Heal shows born from the art of storytelling and performance at the intersection of education and advocacy about health and healing. Shows that embrace the healing power of the arts over a wide range of mental, emotional, and physical challenges, and with talkbacks that offer insights and resources for our audiences. This has grown to include issues of social and environmental justice, with the recognition that how we treat one another and how we treat our planet is all connected. Both theatrical performance and a discussion about autism is before us tonight. Also known as autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, autism is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects communication, social interaction, and behavior. The disorder is called a spectrum disorder because the symptoms and their severity can vary widely from person to person. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the prevalence of autism in the United States is 1 in 54 children. The diagnosis is more common in boys than in girls, with a ratio of 4 to 1. We're going to begin tonight with an excerpt of Andee's show, Rhythm and Autism, after which Andee will join us. Let me tell you about tonight's show. In Rhythm and Autism, Andee tells the story of how her lifelong autistic obsession with rhythm, shaped by the pop culture cheese of her childhood, ultimately became a way to connect with others on the deepest level. But first, she had to reckon with her internal clappy monster, which showed up during the pandemic and changed her relationship with music and other people forever. Last month, Andee performed an excerpt from Rhythm and Autism as part of the FAQ Festival of New Works by the Portland, Oregon Women's Theater Collective from the ground up. What you're about to watch is the first 11 minutes of the show, a piece entitled Andee, You're Weird, as performed at East Portland's Ramona Street Art Farm. The Andee referenced in the title is both her and not her. You'll see what she means. Later in the show, Andee will also perform for us live. And now, if you would please run, Andee, share your screen, and we'll see the first excerpt, which will run 11 minutes.
Do 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 So, I was at this coffee house once and some skeevy guy came up to me and he said one word, autism. So I said, yeah? And he said, that's depressing. I said, not for me it isn't. You see, it's the magnifying effect in my head that makes rhythm extra exciting for me. Although, that wasn't always a habit. If you want to know how I got here, first you must understand the story of Andee, that would be me, versus the clappy monster. That story begins in Brooklyn, New York, where I was born, and winds up in, well, I'll just get on with it. Exploring the dark underbelly of my life is easy. Admitting what makes me go out of my mind with joy, now that's terrifying. As soon as I could sit up, they plopped me in front of a TV. And then carried me off to East Islip, Long Island, in the late 1960s. A place as white bread as could be. And every night music poured out of that console, walnut grain cathode ray tube monstrosity. It lost reception when you moved an inch away from 7:30 to 8:30. Musical variety. In case you're not old enough to remember or you have blissfully forgotten, musical variety shows circa 1970 didn't have a whole lot of musical variety in them as such. Mostly they were about over 30 white guys like Andee Williams and Ray Stevens singing the pop and rock hits of the day. Most of it was recorded on videotapes that later got erased. Even then, they didn't think these shows would stand the test of time. Changing of taste. And I don't know if there's a way to scientifically measure such things or not, but it is possible that Andee Williams was the normiest normie who ever normied. And the big running joke on his show was that his guests always used to snark at him, "Andee, you're weird." The joke, of course, being that he was the only normal person on Earth. Is that even a thing? Andee, you're weird. Andee, you're weird. Andee, you're weird, 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 weird. And then there was the clap and sway thing. I could not get enough of that. I realize that we're in entirely the wrong time signature for that right now. And I apologize. They weren't clapping the waltzes on TV even then. Well, maybe they did on the Lawrence Welk show, but I never watched that, so don't quote me. Anyway, I wouldn't have cared if the time signature was 136.6 over 13. The point is, I wanted to be there, not here, on this rug, the bad dog who ate everybody's work shoes. I wanted people who would sway with me and love it like I did, even if it was the Andee Williams singing Creedence Clearwater Revival with those variety show Vegas cheese arrangements. Strings, horns, soprano backup singers. There's surviving little bits of this on YouTube that look like someone aimed a home movie camera at their console cathode ray walnut grain booby tubey and filmed it. I swear I didn't hallucinate it. Andee, you're weird. Andee, you're weird. Andee, you're weird, 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 weird. We never set foot in a religious institution ever, but I felt those rhythms everywhere, like those Pentecostal church ladies speaking in tongues on Sunday morning, who I didn't even know about yet. But at least they weren't doing it all alone, and they had Jesus for an excuse. I, on the other hand, could tell no one. I was in enough trouble already, even though I hardly ever spoke to anyone. Or maybe because I hardly ever spoke to anyone. Andee, you're weird. Andee, you're weird. Andee, you're weird, 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 weird. Autism, contrary to what you might have heard, has always existed. Things exist before they're defined and redefined. I'm reasonably certain subatomic particles existed before the 19th century. When they looked at me, all they saw was a chubby little girl sucking her thumb and turning the pages of a library book. Although never with the same hand as the thumb I was sucking. I never do a library book dirty that way. The noise coming from me was deafening. I was a Gulfstream 25, buzzing the roof of our house with my thumb and my library book. And the walls I kept bumping into. And the big toe I kept stubbing. I was sure I had broken it every single week. Oh, oh, oh. Andrea, go to your room. I don't want to hear your voice again for the rest of the week. I soon figured out that my room wasn't the worst place to be. A door that closed and locked. Yes, please. So I went inside my room and I closed and locked the door and I sat on my bed and tried to picture myself as a tap dancer on one of those variety shows. But I had stupid feet that couldn't keep a beat. I would never be a professional dancer, but my hands were another matter entirely, a whole different part of me. Yes, my hands were weird, polyrhythmically weird. I learned to make hand sounds nice and soft, so I wouldn't tip the grown-ups off. There were no loopers then. I had to mix it in my head. The soft claps, knee pats, and finger snaps. Kind of like this. So yeah, I was one of those autistic kids who was a compulsive body percussionist. A girl body percussionist. Scary. And as this groove flooded my mind, I found myself swaying from side to side and softly putting my hands together like this. Yes, I did it on one because they taught me that in whiteness class. And then I did it some more because I couldn't not. Just tapping my fingers like this on my palm made me feel strangely peaceful and calm. I love the feeling of my hands touching, even if I was the only one who'd ever felt that way in the entire history of opposable thumbs. I call it the sustainable clap. You can clap like this for hours and it won't hurt. I'm very sensitive and it doesn't hurt me at all. Why don't you try it with me? You might irrationally like it. 2, 3, yes, just like that. 2, 3. And I thought, what if other people like to do this too? Stranger things happen in this world, I know they do. Please keep clapping. Waltz, waltz, this ain't no waltz. This is the stuff my hands do, and that's not my fault. Yes, yes, I know I'm weird, and weird's not a good thing to be around here, but I know one day you'll see other people will be doing this with me, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but if you think about it, would any of us even be here if no one was weird? Sorry, I didn't know I was making that much noise. Could they ever understand these things I did with my hands? If it was being me, it's gonna ruin all their plans.
That's great. Thank you so much, Andee. I love that clip. What a wonderful show.
Thank you.
I want to take a quick minute to tell people about our tip jar. Please do help support the artists and the Marsh. We always appreciate your support in the tip jar, and Brianna has the link there in our chat box. And if your comments and questions are welcome. So whether you're on Zoom or YouTube, we'll pick those up, and we'd love to hear from you. So Andee, according to your bio, you got diagnosed when you were 44. Tell
That's
us
right.
up to that.
Hang on a sec.
Because there wasn't even, the spectrum wasn't as wide.
No, it
Um,
wasn't at all. It wasn't at all. When I was a kid, autism. When I was 3 years old, which is where they say that autistic traits have to be in place by the time you're 3, or you're not diagnosable. But when I was 3 years old, autism wasn't even a separate diagnosis in the DSM. It was coupled with childhood schizophrenia, which was a condition that nobody wanted their kid to be diagnosed with because the kid would almost certainly be institutionalized. And and the diagnosis also did not apply to kids who could talk at that time. That didn't, yeah, that didn't get broadened until much later. And there's like a whole history behind how that happened. We probably don't have time to go into all the details of that, but suffice it to say, I would not have been diagnosable until at the very earliest, my early 30s, under
boy,
present criteria.
that's remarkable. And we were just saying, that the spectrum is so wide, so a lot of more people can go on it and then be able to, get help
Get accommodations and get understanding and get support and that kind of stuff. I mean, I was like the space egg that hatched in the middle of the living room, and they didn't know what to do with me.
well, the sense of humor is certainly something that's helped you.
Yeah, well, I've developed that over time, but yeah. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention that that video that you just saw was shot by Rachel Himsel, a very gifted friend of mine who's also a fellow performer in From the Ground Up, and but she was kind enough to shoot videos for us all that night, and so that's what you just saw. But as you saw from Andee, You're Weird, I had this thing in me all my life that I figured out pretty quickly I had to try with all my might to deny its existence. And so when you do that, when you suppress a stim and a fixation for decades, screwy things happen to you. And by the time I got my diagnosis, I felt like I had failed at pretty much every single thing that there was to fail at. I was, or so I thought, a bad everything. And my partner thought I would benefit from going to a therapist who did neurolinguistic programming to try to break some of the repeating loops in my head. And that wound up being the therapist who diagnosed me. And it was absolutely the last thing that I expected. I was like, but I'm not Rain Man. And the therapist was like, no, that's one possible type. That's not the diagnostic criteria. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
Programming, that's interesting. Yeah. So
we did do some of that too, but
yeah. Well, that's great. But at age 44, that's quite remarkable. I'm sure that's happening more and more with people.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of people get diagnosed at the same time their kids do, which is wild.
And how often is it that it's parent to child?
I think it is strongly hereditary. It definitely runs in families. I think there's something like 80% concordance with identical twins. So I think probably that part of it is genetic, and then there's also the way in which it expresses itself. We're in a much more constantly stimulating environment now than it was for most kids who were growing up in the burbs, at least at my age. We didn't have everything was a lot slower and quieter there then. We didn't have a big blabbering TV in every waiting room, and bouncy music everywhere you go, and we weren't expected to be constantly social with our parents. And I don't know if that's better or it was just different. But
I was going to say, is that harder for you?
Well, it could be if you have sensitivity in certain areas to the traits might show up a lot sooner if there's more of that stimulation. I mean, sometimes when you're very young, people are just like, oh well, she's just shy or whatever, or she's just a little bit odd. But as the social demands on you increase and the sensory stimulation on you increases, then these things are going to probably come out a lot more. Yeah, the other thing too, sorry. The other thing too is that a lot of people in my generation, I believe, didn't get diagnosed. And unfortunately, I think a lot of them died from not being diagnosed. Because they just felt snubbed and rejected everywhere they went, and that finished them off.
Wow, that is a sad story. And the stimulation we have today, I mean, it's overwhelming for us all.
No kidding.
Yeah, so I wonder how that could, contribute. I mean, I guess we don't really know, but to this, seemingly.
Well, it's like well, the thing is that, it might be good in a way that we know. I mean, it's better we know than not know. Because like you said, we live in a world where there's a lot of social demands and sensory demands on us. And, maybe it's sometimes the more sensitive of us that are going to have to put the brakes on that and go, whoa, let's have a little, let's balance this out a little bit. Mhm.
So you say you got
Yeah.
called to sing for as many strangers as possible a few years after that. Had you not sung for anyone before, or what led you back into that?
Well, I had made multiple attempts over the years to get back into music, but after some bad experiences, I was convinced that no one would ever want to look at me or listen to me. This was before I was diagnosed. And I had, mental health problems that festered as a result of not being diagnosed or accommodated. And I also had physical problems. I had polycystic ovarian syndrome. By the time that was diagnosed in my 30s, it cost me half the hair on my head. This is a wig. But, if I hadn't lost my hair, I wouldn't have found out, that this color really suited me.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so it's
And what
like
is
that.
it you
Yeah.
said you had that caused that?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Oh,
It gave me very, very high levels of free testosterone, and it cost me like half the hair on my head. And
oh, interesting.
the meds that had to take to control all of that stuff made me officially plus sized. And when I was in my teens and 20s, those things pretty much made you ineligible to go near a microphone. I would have needed black belt social skills and super confidence to navigate that, and I didn't have that. So I turned to writing and I had some success doing that. A little less than 10 years ago, I was working on a young adult novel. And one thing I did when I was the age of my characters was listen to Casey Kasem's American Top 40 every week and write down all the songs in a notebook. So I found some AT40 broadcasts online and I set my mind to my 15-year-old self and all the feelings that I got from music. And one of the songs I heard was a Brian Hyland cover of Curtis Mayfield's Gypsy Woman. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you why exactly, but that man's voice got to me, got to my 15-year-old self, hit it hard. And I knew at that moment that something had changed, but I didn't know what it looked like yet. So smash cut to a few months later when I abandoned my original YA novel and I get another idea for a novel about an autistic girl who develops a fixation on an obscure girl singer from the 1960s, fictitious singer. That novel was called The Amy Virus. Who knew, right? I finished that in 2016, and it got accepted into the Multnomah County, which is Portland, Library Writers Project the following year. And it's still out there on Smashwords if anybody wants to see it. But eventually somebody wrote a TV tropes page about it, even though it was never officially published because print publishers thought it was too long. But I guess somebody liked it. Anyway.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'd like to be able to post that if we can.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Part of the process of writing this book was letting my characters talk to me. And Cyan, my protagonist, said to me one day, in order for me to understand me or Amy, you're going to have to get back into writing and singing and playing music live. So I then took some voice lessons and found out I had this massive vocal range that I had never tapped into. So I expanded my range in both directions at age 50, which apparently never happens. So
wow.
then I started writing for that voice, which had all these different textures and dimensions that I didn't have before my alleged sell-by date.
And so these were some of the obstacles. I mean, what else do you had to deal with in getting back into music and doing shows, writing songs? Were they mostly external or internal or a mix of both?
Well, the social problems that I had the last time I attempted to do music hadn't gone away. I had a much better idea of why they were happening, but I believed that I was led back into performing in order to confront certain things about myself that needed to be confronted. I needed to get a better handle on my brain troll, that thing in me that just loves to tell me how much I suck and how much people dislike me. I have to be on guard for that thing constantly. Yeah, I've developed kill switches for it, but it is an ongoing process. And unwritten social expectations were always where I got tripped up. So I thought, if I can't people even weirdo to weirdo, then how can I music? Which reminds me of a song.
Ah, I wrote.
This is
So
called.
you do a piece live for us?
I am going to do a piece live for you.
Is this How Are You?
Yes, this is How Are You? Okay. First, I'm going to make sure I'm not banging into my guitar. All right. Okay. I'm increasingly of the opinion that all children should have acting lessons, starting in kindergarten, because it was right around that age that a friend of my parents said to me, "How are you?" And I said, "I have a stomach ache." I was told that that was the wrong answer. The correct answer was, "I'm fine, how are you?" I said, "But why would people ask that if they already know the answer?" They still haven't told me. You see me around this place once or twice, and you talk to me, and you thought I seemed nice. So when you see me, you stop, and you ask me, "How are you?" Well, it's a question with no answer, and we're all supposed to lie. But no one ever believes me, even though I try to say I'm doing great, but not so great you can't relate. So from now on, if you ask me, this will be my reply. Well, since you asked, I sleep like Elvis, and I sing like a Siamese cat, and I probably should be doing the opposite of that. And I never did fit in, not even in a loony bin. You know what? I forgot to unmute my guitar. That's why you're not hearing very well. Okay. You see me around this place once or twice, and you talk to me, and you thought I seemed nice. So when you see me, you stop, and you ask me, "How are you?" Well, it's a question with no answer, and we're all supposed to lie. But no one ever believes me, even though I try to say I'm doing great, but not so great you can't relate. So from now on, if you ask me, this will be my reply. Well, since you asked, I sleep like Elvis, and I sing like a Siamese cat, and I probably should be doing the opposite of that. And I never did fit in, not even in a loony bin. And how are you? How are you? How are you? Oh, and by the by, I stunk up building self-esteem and I flunked serenity. So how are you with breathing next to someone like me? I don't want to be scary to talk to, just scary to abuse. And how are you? How are you? How are you? I don't know. When I was 6, if someone had told me that they had a stomach ache, I think my answer would have been something like, "Really? How bad is it?" Because that could be a sign that something was really wrong, right? I thought, if words don't actually mean things, then why don't we all just talk in meow language all the time, like we're all in a cat food commercial? No language barriers ever. Everybody speaks meow. You see, everything is theater, which is why the holistic world needs autistic people. We dissolve BS on contact. But first, they gotta let us in the door. Just kidding. I'd never say that out loud. I'd rather you thought I was one of the crowd. Isn't that the whole reason people ask, "How are you?" Oh, gods. How am I what? How is my what? There's 3 seconds to sort through all the data I've got to find one thing you'd find fascinating. But I'd be fascinated, believe it or not, if someone said, "Well, I sleep like Elvis and I sing like a Siamese cat, and I probably should be doing the opposite of that. And I never did fit in, not even in a loony bin." Then how are you? How are you? How are you? Oh, and by the by, I stunk up building self-esteem and I flunked serenity. So how are you with breathing next to someone like me? I don't want to be scary to talk to, just scary to abuse. And how are you? How are you? How are you? Oh, 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 so many conversations all at once. Not one of them for me. They're not in the market for that kind of honesty. They want a polished, self-edited authenticity. But what are you gonna do? Some people hate kittens too. Speaking of that, well, I sleep like Elvis and I sing like a Siamese cat. And I probably should be doing the opposite of that. And I never did fit in, not even in a loony bin. And how are you? How are you? How are you? Oh, and by the by, I stunk up building self-esteem and I flunked serenity. So how are you with breathing next to someone like me? I don't want to be scary to talk to, just scary to abuse. And how are you? How are you? How are you? Hand me the mustard, I think I'll fly a kite. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. That's a beautiful song too, but it's so insightful in terms of, your whole situation and
Thank
how you're
you.
feeling. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And BS meter, how did you put it?
Oh, we did that. We dissolve BS on contact.
But they got to let us in the door.
Yes.
That's wonderful. I love your lyrics. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
your voice. It's really, really, really wonderful.
Thank you.
And so obviously, I mean, just from this, you encountered a lot of people being prejudiced against you for being neurodivergent. You would say, how did you deal with that? This kind of speaks to that.
Yeah, so much in the entertainment world and the art world has to do with, how many punches your social acceptance or hip card has on it, and how fast you can move and think on your feet and guess what other people want you to do. And oh yeah, multitasking. That's that's another festive thing. But yeah, I do think there is a lot of prejudice and ableism in music, and it usually doesn't take the form of people saying, we hate neurodivergent people, you shouldn't be here, get out. It's more like we don't want to think about trying to accommodate people whose needs are so different from ours, and we don't have to because we have so many great performers coming out of our ears already. So.
And what about the multitasking? You're saying
Mm-hmm.
that
Well,
that is something that you find yourself doing more, or that's more too difficult?
it's something that is largely expected of more of holistic people or more neurotypical people, that they're expected to juggle all this and this and this and this and this, and it's like they'll ask you a question, you barely have time to get your brain in gear to answer it, and they've dashed off to do something else. Like whoa, wait a minute. So yeah, so I have to, I mean, even playing guitar and singing is sort of like multitasking. It's kind of funny. I had to really work at it in order to coordinate that.
So did you find over the years you just really had to focus on being very organized and I mean,
being well enough? I've learned over the years. I mean, my partner's been a great influence in this area to set things up when I move into a place, so that so I have to kind of set things up. You know how blind people have to set up their houses so that they don't bump into things and step on things and trip on things. I have to do something similar when I set up an environment for myself. I have to set things up in a way that makes sense to my brain. And it's like if I've done that, then even if things sometimes, I mean, right now you're seeing the office at peak tidiness. It's not, a lot of the time it's not like that. So it looks like it looks like things just kind of exploded in here because I've got working on this and working on that, and oh yeah, what about this and this and the other thing. Yeah, I have ADHD too, so that makes it even more interesting. So
is that something that is commensurate sometimes with autism, or?
it used to be, until the last DSM, which was came out 10 years ago. You couldn't be diagnosed with both Asperger's syndrome, which was my initial diagnosis, and also ADD. But they changed it so that with the autism spectrum categories 1, 2, 3, most of the people with Asperger's became autism 1s, and they changed it so that you could co-diagnose somebody with ADHD as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
so you conceived, I'm sorry.
no, go.
You conceived a rhythm and autism about 2 years ago, is it
Mm-hmm.
now?
Oh yeah,
And
almost.
I mentioned
Yeah.
something about a backyard concert during the shutdowns that changed your approach to performing. So what happened first after that concert?
Yeah, so that show was really the first time I had written a real script that I interwove with my songs, and I loved doing that, and the audience seemed to really get off on it too. And, my friend Joey Helpish, who put on the show, said to me afterwards, if I were you, I'd be thinking one-woman show. And I had actually had that in the back of my mind for a couple of years, but I didn't have a show concept that really felt right. But I had seen Hannah Gadsby's work, and it really fired me up to do something like that. Those sharp observations that only somebody with our wiring could possibly have made. But I wanted to do it with music. And I had used the phrase rhythm and autism on some of my social media posts. And at that moment, that phrase popped into my head, and I thought, that's it, rhythm and autism. That's the story of my life, and I can tell it in an infectious, participatory way.
You think that's a common thing among autistic people, having that rhythm? I mean, I guess you can.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think that's a lot of that is just me. But I do think that, I do think that there are people who have rhythmic stims. That's for sure. I mean, there's definitely people who have like the rhythmic stim thing. They do they have, like I said, compulsive body percussionists and that kind of stuff. That does happen. But yeah, I think my the way I perceive rhythm might be just my thing.
Well, some of that is tell us some more about Clappy Monster without giving away any major plot points. What is that exactly?
Okay, so let me get some water in me first. So like almost every other performer, I got pretty depressed when everything got shut down, right? So, but it took the Clappy Monster for me to illustrate exactly what that meant in my life. At first, I just thought it was an escape from a depressing reality, but it went places I did not expect, and it made me who I am right now. The Clappy Monster told me that it was okay, that clapping made me feel that good, that even the sight of it was the most beautiful thing to me. Because, other people like it too. Who knew? But this is where it started. So during the pandemic lockdowns, or as we Jews like to call it, the Nishigas, I had plenty of extra time to go down YouTube rabbit holes. And I found this video of Otis Redding doing Try a Little Tenderness in Oslo, Norway in 1967. Pretty much the entire audience is white. They've probably never seen a show anything like this. So for this song, ending his set, he has 3 false endings. He sings the last line, hands the mic to the announcer, runs behind the curtain and back of the stage. The horns blare one last time. The announcer says, Otis Redding, and the crowd cheers. Yeah. And then, "12 seconds later, he comes back out, grabs the mic, does 2 more choruses, runs off the stage in the same way. He does this a total of 3 times, each time faster and more intense than the last one. By that last chorus, these blonde Scandinavian kids are on their knees, screaming, weeping, speaking in tongues, and doing what used to be called soul clapping back in the Pleistocene epoch. Now, when I do this live, I usually have the audience do the claps with me, but since we do not have a live audience, I have a background video that can show you exactly what I'm talking about here. And there it is. There it is. That's right, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And if you feel like doing it, hey, who's going to stop you? You're at home. That's right. Try a little tenderness, oh, and love her like you mean it, yeah. You gotta hold her, squeeze her, don't tease her, never leave her. Oh. See, that feels pretty good, right? And yet, I've been all around this great big internet and I've not found any evidence of anyone who admits to a full-on geek out about clapping. I found zillions of videos of people literally pretending to eat laundry detergent. But a clapping fixation? Nope, that's a bridge too far. Socially unacceptable. I know. Strange things happened to all our brains in the early 2020s. But I knew the Clappy Monster was mine alone.
and it was just getting, and that's where that ends.
I love it. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, I love the Clappy Monster. And your show, it makes your show highly interactive, right? You know?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And the common stereotype of autistic people is that you don't want to interact with others.
Well,
and
there
yet
are some
it seems to be
performers
your
who are
main
like that.
source of joy.
Yeah, I mean, there's some performers who are like that, but in my own case, I found that when I started doing music again a couple of years before the pandemic, I found out how much of a dopamine squirt it was to get a crowd going. I mean, I'd never really had that before. I'd done it accidentally once or twice when I was younger, but I didn't know how to repeat it or sustain it or anything like that. I actually started writing some material that had the audience participation baked into it. And I practiced holding onto the rhythm, and I studied what made an audience start or stop clapping. I watched lots and lots of videos, like the Otis Redding thing I just showed you. Whether it was different if people knew the performer versus whether they didn't, whether it was different on TV versus on a concert. and it's weird because a lot of people find me difficult to approach socially, and yet I got praise for bringing a room together, even from people who didn't care all that much for the sounds I was making. It wasn't so much that I didn't want to interact with others. It was that I often felt like they didn't want me to, that I wasn't cool enough, and the clap-alongs and sometimes flap-alongs were my way of getting to do that.
Yeah, sure. So you discovered that you really love that, and how do you think audience participation is different for you than it is for other performers?
Oh, well, I think because I sort of, it's like I sort of approach it in that way. And people don't think about woodshedding things like, practicing holding onto the rhythm while claps are going on. They usually don't think about doing that the same way they practice music, but that's what I did. Because when I first started doing this, when I first started doing music in my 50s, I didn't even own a guitar at that point. I was going on stage and singing, singing and drumming, and at one point I bought a U bass and I was like playing, it's like a U bass is like a bass on a baritone uke body, and it weighs like nothing. So it's like I was kind of playing that a little bit on stage, and yeah, but I would also drum. I have like I have my tambourines back here, and I have a pandero and all kinds of.
I see that tambourine there. What are you? What's
this? Oh yes, this is what I call my Tracy tambourine, or Tracy for short. There's a song on my show called Tracy's Tambourine, which is about how I loved the Partridge Family like a lot of little girls my age, but secretly my fixation on the Partridge Family had to do with Tracy's tambourine. I just wanted one, and I couldn't have one because I lived in a house where even library books were too noisy. So
oh dear. And is that stickers all over there?
Yeah, I put sparkly heart-shaped stickers on it like I would have when I was 7.
That's great.
Yeah, it's fun.
And are you self-taught? Did you take lessons for guitar? And
yeah, I took lessons when I was in camp. I started taking lessons when I was in summer camp. I was about 10. And, I also had some piano lessons, but in those days, music lessons were so dry and boring. The guitar lessons I had in camp were more fun because they would teach me how to play actual songs. In those days, they wouldn't do that. They were like, well, you have to learn your scales and your Bach minuets and blah, blah, blah. It's like these days the kids get thrown a bone. It's like, okay, we'll teach you this and we'll show you where that came from. It's like this Bach did something like this when that, it's like, I think that's why there are so many kids now who are better musicians than we were, because they don't get turned off by all this dry scale stuff that they have to do for years. But
yeah, not just restricted to things. There's a lot more and ways to introduce it.
Yeah. So yeah, I started playing a little bit when I was 10. I played in my, then I played until, I kind of played until college. I kind of dropped it in college. I picked it up and dropped it, picked it up and dropped it, picked up and dropped it. I made a pass and So I knew how to play guitar, but what happens is if you don't play for a long time, your calluses get squishy, and then it becomes painful to actually press the strings down. So I had to build those back up again.
Where did you go to college?
NYU, excuse me, New York University.
Yes, wonderful. And what was your focus?
Oh, in college?
Mhm.
Yeah, I majored in dramatic writing. I was actually in, what I call the lab mouse version of Tisch School of the Arts. We weren't they weren't in that fancy building yet, and it wasn't super difficult to get into. Yeah, so and that was about with no diagnosis, no accommodations, no anything, and basically having a headache all the time, and just
in
and
New
a stomach
York.
ache all
Wow.
the time. Yep. And in New York, well, the nice thing about New York is I didn't have to drive. That was the
There you
really
go.
attractive thing about it. I didn't have to drive.
Yeah,
But yeah, and there were all these record stores. I was like, yeah, record stores. I was like really into record stores. I would plow through those bins all the time.
Oh, wonderful.
But the thing is, in New York in those days, you had these places, these hipster places. Like I don't know if you ever saw the movie High Fidelity, but
Oh, sure.
oh yeah, the, I think there was a place in New York called Bleecker Bob's that was like notorious for it. If you brought an album up to the counter and the clerk thought it was like uncool, they'd give you crap about wanting to buy it. I mean, these days they would never do that. They would be like, well, their money's as good as anybody else's, blah blah, and then they'd maybe make fun of you after you left, but. But they was like, you're gonna buy that? It's like, and I'd be like, well, why do you have it in the store if you don't want people to buy it? Are you testing people?
Yes, right. That's great. So, how do you think being neurodivergent has affected your sound as a vocalist and as a composer?
Oh yeah, well, like before I knew there was any such thing as neurodivergent, I just thought I was kind of a weirdo contrarian. It's like I told you about the Tracy's tambourine stuff, and I had tried to mimic what other girls did and kiss my David Cassidy poster, but my heart wasn't really in it. So now I own 11 tambourines because I can. But I think that's a lot of it. I mean, in some ways I don't have it's like I like a lot of things that other people like, but often for different reasons. And back in the day when I was copying down the American Top 40, I was trying to figure out what mainstream people liked and why. And I tried to like what they like, and sometimes they succeeded. But, I always, loved stuff that was funkier and weirder and more eccentric and percussive than my peers did. I was really into Laura Nyro, and I was about 10 or 15 years late on that. It's like I was born about 10 or 15 years after the typical Laura Nyro fan. But I also got into punk and new wave ahead of most of my peers. Although I never went to a punk club. I was much too chicken for that. It's like what's weird is that I mean, I hardly ever went to clubs, but I spent a lot of time in libraries looking up stuff about music. I know that's like really super strange. But that was
Wonderful.
yeah. But yeah. And the Brian Hyland thing that I mentioned earlier was about an example of how I extracted something different out of something that was very popular in its time. I mean, he had this voice that got raspy when it got softer, and his sound was kind of stratified, like sounded like different people in different registers of his voice. And, soon after that, I realized that I had that kind of voice also. And, I don't know of anybody else who discovers a singing voice or develops a singing voice that way. I also didn't do a whole lot of imitating other music people because I always thought I'd look silly doing it. I don't think anybody else looks silly doing it, just that I would. It's like I often joke about the autism diagnostic criteria. We can sum that up in 5 words. We notice stuff y'all don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of the time, like at a school, like at a school dance, I'd be absorbed in the music and trying not to think about the boy I had that unrequited crush on, because they were all unrequited crushes then. And the dance gave me some hope that my future might be different. Mind if I do a song about that?
Is this the Stuff my hands do?
Oh, I can do that one first. No, yeah, no
No,
problem.
no, do the other. Do the other. We have time.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. No. Red cable, please. I'm going to the dance alone cause I ask myself, do I want to? Do I want to wear my pretty threads? Try to get my hair all done up to? Do I want to feel the beat in every toe and finger? Do I want to laugh when they laugh at me and say, we knew no one wanted to bring her? Do I want to glide around that empty floor like it's my own private club? Do I want to scan the room in the dark for the one I could love? Do I want to pretend I'm not and just talk a little too loud? To my bud, did future boo hear me? Did anybody hear me? I'm going to the dance alone cause I ask myself, do I want to go? Do I want to be seen in a whole new way by people who think they know me from looking at me in my everyday clothes? Do I want to wear my new twirler dress, the color of royal indigo? I want to tell the world royal indigo is my favorite color, but I never told a soul before, and I don't have the guts, not yet, to wear it when the lights are up in front of everyone I could love. Did future boo hear me? Did everybody hear me? Ba-dum, let's have some drums for the girl who twirls, yeah. Ba-dum, let's have some bass for the girl who gives herself a whirl, yeah. Ba-dum, doesn't make any sense, will it make any difference? And when I get home, what story will I tell my parents? And maybe Monday, yeah, but definitely one day I'll wear this color that I love again. Finally made myself some real friends who I don't know yet, but I know they exist, and they won't judge me, they won't snub me, just cause I've never officially been kissed. I was wondering, would I want to go to the dance alone? Oh, yeah. I'm going to the dance alone cause I asked myself and I said yes. Cause it's more than just a chance to wear eyeliner and a twirler dress. It's about feeling like my life has a chance to turn out right. Maybe I'll turn out to be a great DJ or play drums in a real band one day, yeah. I can feel love and arms surround me. I don't even much care if my folks ground me. Now everything can happen as long as I stay at the dance. Oh, if you want to sing these last few ba-dums, go ahead, starting in 3, 2, 1, hit it. Ba-da, let's have some drums for the girl who twirls, yeah. Ba-da, let's have some bass for the girl who gives herself a whirl, yeah. Ba-da, some tambourines for the one who glows in royal indigo. Ba-da, some maracas for the one you're just getting to know. Ba-dum, all the percussion for the one who does what she loves best, and who loves best what she does best, and believes best what she needs best. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, yeah. Ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. Thank you.
Beautiful. I love your range. That was beautiful, beautiful
Thank
ending.
you.
Thank you for playing that.
Thank
That was
you.
a nice surprise.
Thank you.
You also mentioned in your show you do sensory friendly shows for people with high sensory sensitivity. What are some of the basic principles of the sensory friendly show? What's the Andee Joyce way?
Oh, okay. Well, I have different approaches. The first approach is one that's 100% free of common sensory triggers, which means like no wacky high notes, no clattery or high pitch percussion, no clapping. Yes, not even for applause. It would be flat applause only. And I would wear more muted colors than usual. And I'd have the house lights up so I could see everybody flapping because I wouldn't be able to hear them. And yeah, if not so common triggers are specifically requested for an individual show, I'll avoid those triggers also. While I love a lot of that stuff, I'm also an access freak, and it's fun. It's fun to do a show like that every now and then to kind of reset my sensorium, and it's have the house lights up and see all the flapping. And the second approach is what I call a hybrid show, which means that we start out with a first half that's 100% sensory friendly, like I mentioned. And then in the second half, we bring in all those other noises that I love, the clapping, the tambourines, the background video. And I ease people into all that stuff, starting with the soft claps, like at the end of that video you just saw. And, I also have these soft sensory friendly pre-recorded claps, and those were also in the background track of that video. But regardless of what type of show it is, I print out a program listing the sensory elements that the audience can expect from each scene, and I set a container that allows people to step out if they're getting overloaded or they think that there's a sound coming that they won't be able to deal with, or give them a chance to put in their earplugs. And I even give those out for a full show. And I think what makes my approach unique is that I do have high sensory sensitivity. Many autistic people actually don't. They either have more standard sensitivity or very low sensitivity, and those of us who have less there are those of us who have more sensitivity to different things than others. And if sometimes we'll have high sensitivity to something and we'll seek it rather than avoid it because it gives us pleasure. So there's a lot of nuance to it. But do I have time to do a little stuff my hands do here? My song about flapping.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That would be the perfect closer.
So yeah. This is actually always a must in a sensory friendly show. And I always invite the audience to flap with me if they so desire, even if they lack autism. That's right. This is the stuff my hands do when I get a chance to sing for you. This is the stuff my hands do when I feel it hard, I gotta let it loose. Yeah, this is the stuff my hands do when I get a chance to sing for you. This is the stuff my hands do. And if you feel like it, then do it too. Or don't. Just saying. Anyway, I used to keep myself clenched up, trying to keep my hands still, thinking I could make myself stop by sheer force of will. But my hands knew me better than I did. They said, please, please let us move. So finally one day I gave in. I let my heart get soothed by the rhythm of my hand, going up and down, side to side. No more embarrassment or shame. Now I flap with pride. Yeah, this is the stuff my hands do when I get a chance to sing for you. This is the stuff my hands do when I feel it hard, I gotta let it loose. Yeah, this is the stuff my hands do when I get a chance to sing for you. This is the stuff my hands do. And if you feel like it, then do it too. Well, I guess technically you don't have to be autistic to flap, although it helps. Anyway, no more fingers in my mouth, no more chewing on my nails, no more spending all my days feeling like I'm in movement jail. This is the stuff my hands do. And who do I harm if that's true? This is the stuff my hands do. They're here to show you something new, here to show you something new, here to show you something new. This is the stuff my hands do. Woo! That's it.
I was here flapping.
I felt it.
Andee, Joyce, it's been such a pleasure having you with us. Thank
you.
So
it's really been a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's just beautiful work. And everyone, you can learn more about Andee at rhythmandautism.com. That's in the chat. That's easy to remember with all these fabulous songs. And please remember our tip jar as well. We all appreciate your support. Any closing comments or anything you'd like to make, Andee?
Well, I'm I'm actually going to be doing a song, not a song, what am I saying? Let's brain. I'm actually going to be doing a show at the Walters Cultural Arts Center in next April. They booked that far in advance. I got the word in May that I was going to get to do a show like almost a year later. And it's going to be one of those hybrid shows. It's in Hillsboro, Oregon, if anybody's in that area. If you want to get on my mailing list at rhythmandautism.com, you'll be kept abreast of when it's coming. But it's going to be Friday, April 19th, 2024. Can you believe it?
Wonderful. That's great. Well, I encourage people to sign up, and I'm on your list, and I really look forward to that. So again, a great thank you.
Oh, yes, and Aspire. That's right. Brianna just put the link to Aspire. That's the academic, the Academic Autistic Partnership Autistic Spectrum Partnership in Research and Education. This is a fantastic research group that I'm part of that does research on autistic adults. That was founded in 2006, co-founded by Dora Raymaker, who was an autistic researcher herself, and found that at that time there was like almost no research on autistic adults, which was ridiculous. And now, almost 17 years later, there's tons of it, and I think Aspire has a lot to do with it. And they really listen to autistic people, and they really center us and make us part of the decision-making process. So it's a fantastic organization.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you're part of it. Thank you for posting that, Brianna. That's great. Well, thank you again. The time always flies by. Much enjoyed your performance and getting to know you and more about autism.
Thank you.
So much to learn about, and I think we learned a lot tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity and meeting you and everything.
Very good. Thank you. And so I want to say to our audience, look for Solo Arts Heal shows bi-weekly on the Marsh Stream, hosted by yours truly, or ANCAN peer-to-peer support organization founder Rick Davis. And next month, we'll feature Joanna Rush in No Malarkey. I'm looking forward to hosting this hilarious, political, and informative show. It addresses healing our political strife. How about that? And here bi-weekly Wednesday nights on the Marsh Stream. So with thanks again to Andee, our Marsh Stream producer, Brianna Caver, artistic director, Stephanie Weisman, the Marsh marketing team, and always to you, our Zoom and YouTube audiences. Thanks so much for joining us. We're all in this together. See you next time.